Welcome to the Paramove training presentation. This presentation is designed to inform you about Paramove and how to handle it safely. By the end of this training, you'll have the knowledge to use Paramove with confidence and handle it with care. Everyone who comes into contact with Paramove must have this training. So let's begin. We'll start with basics. What exactly is Paramove? Well, Paramove is a fully licensed veterinary prescription-only medicine designed for the control of sea lice on farmed salmon. Paramove contains hydrogen peroxide as the active substance, which is highly effective for this purpose. Paramove is manufactured by Solvay in Europe, according to good manufacturing practice, known as GMP. Although Paramove is a veterinary medicine, it doesn't come in the sort of packaging we normally associate with medicines. Paramove is supplied in ISO tanks or intermediate bulk containers, like one of these. When using Paramove, you must remember that hydrogen peroxide is a chemical and should always be handled with care. When Paramove is not handled correctly, there could be serious consequences, which is why we've put this training together. If you pay attention to the following details, you'll have all the necessary skills to use the product. Paramove is a colorless liquid that looks just like water, so it's not always easy to identify. Let's learn a little more about the product's unique properties and how these properties can cause problems when not handled correctly. First, let's talk about the normal decomposition of Paramove and the problems this can cause. Paramove is a product that slowly breaks down or decomposes. At room temperature, this decomposition cannot be stopped. Small amounts of oxygen are released, and what's left is just water. If Paramove is stored in an unvented container, over time, this oxygen will build up, causing an increase in pressure. Eventually, the pressure will build to such an extent that the container could burst. At normal room temperature, over a long period of time, 1 liter of Paramove will decompose to produce 200 liters of oxygen. So, how do we avoid this problem? It's simple, really. As we said earlier, Paramove is supplied in ISO tanks and intermediate bulk containers that are all equipped with venting devices. These venting devices release the small amounts of oxygen that are produced. From your point of view, it's important to ensure that all pipework that may come into contact with Paramove is designed in such a way that it's impossible for it to get trapped, for example, between two closed valves. Even the ball in a ball valve must be drilled on the side facing the liquid flow. Okay, let's move on to the dangers of rapid decomposition. We'll discuss how this is caused and how it can be avoided. Paramove's normal rate of decomposition is very slow. However, this can be dramatically speeded up when the product comes into contact with incompatible materials. Basically, this means most commonly encountered materials such as iron, mild steel, copper, brass, concrete, or even general dust and dirty water. Rapid decomposition also generates heat, which causes the temperature of the Paramove to rise, eventually to the point where the liquid boils. You should never mix Paramove with other materials such as alkalis, cleaning solutions, most metals, solvents, and fuels. Always assume that such materials are incompatible with Paramove, unless you have expert advice to the contrary. Don't store Paramove near heat sources, as this is another factor that can cause an increase in the rate of decomposition. And on the topic of heat, we'll move to our next point of discussion: Paramove and fire. Paramove does not burn. But as it decomposes, it releases pure oxygen. When oxygen builds up, it causes things around it to burn faster and more fiercely. It also causes them to catch fire more easily. In addition to this, if paramove is spilled onto flammable materials such as paper, wood, cloth or leather, it can cause these materials to spontaneously ignite. To prove our point, the demonstration you're watching was caused using a very concentrated product, which is not sold commercially. However, when paramove is spilled onto any flammable materials, combustion doesn't occur immediately. In fact, it can happen several hours or days later. This brings us to our final topic within this section, corrosiveness. Paramove is corrosive towards most materials, including many metals, plastics and skin. We will discuss these effects in the next chapter. Now we know about the product characteristics of paramove, how do we handle it safely? The important thing is to always follow a few simple rules that we are about to explain to you. First, as we said earlier, never trap paramove in an enclosed space. Always use vented containers. Always use drilled ball valves, and, where two valves can be closed on a line at the same time, fit a pressure relief valve in the line between them. Next, it's important to only use materials that are compatible with paramove. For metals, this means 304 or 316 grades of stainless steel, where the surface and any welds have been properly cleaned. Further information on the surface treatment procedures can be obtained from Solvay. For plastics, PTFE and high-density polyethylene are compatible, but even polyethylene will eventually become embrittled after several years in contact with paramove. All other materials should be regarded as incompatible unless there's reliable evidence to demonstrate otherwise. You should be aware that equipment suppliers do not always understand that their materials can cause paramove to decompose. They sometimes only consider the effect of paramove on their materials. It is in fact a two-way effect, so if in any doubt, please contact Solvay for further information. The third rule is to keep storage areas and equipment clean and tidy at all times. Remember, if paramove comes into contact with combustible materials, it can start a fire, so remove all combustible materials. Next, safety equipment such as eye wash facilities, safety showers and water for rinsing must be nearby and available at all times. They should also be checked regularly to ensure that they're in working order. Another very important rule is to ensure that you wear the correct personal protective equipment when handling paramove. The most common problem where paramove is concerned is inadvertently getting it on someone else's hands. This usually happens when the person wearing gloves, as recommended, unknowingly gets paramove on the outside of their gloves and subsequently takes hold of objects such as a handrail or door handle, leaving behind a residue of paramove. When someone not wearing gloves touches this rail, they'll feel a stinging sensation shortly afterwards and see white discoloration of the skin, which is typical of skin contact with paramove. The skin color usually returns to normal after a short time. If there is any possibility that personal protective equipment has become contaminated, it should be rinsed with plenty of water after use. Next, always use dedicated equipment for handling paramove. Equipment such as hoses should only be used for paramove and nothing else. Where practical, equipment should be labeled. Another important rule is that you must never return unused paramove to its original container. The paramove may have become contaminated and could therefore contaminate the rest of the container. Another rule: Make sure that Paramove is not mixed with other substances such as oils, fuels or other chemicals. Extreme care must be taken to avoid these materials coming into contact with Paramove, even in drains or sewers. And finally, any Paramove spillages should be diluted with plenty of water. Clothing in particular should always be thoroughly rinsed with water. You should never allow clothing that has come into contact with Paramove to dry out without first rinsing it. As a reminder, always display a copy of the Solvay safety poster near an area where Paramove is stored or handled. The safety poster lists all of the necessary rules of good practice and the emergency actions that should be carried out. Now that you know a little more about handling Paramove safely, let's briefly discuss how the product gets to you and how you should handle it on arrival. Paramove is manufactured by Solvay under good manufacturing practice in Europe. The Paramove package is tagged and sealed at Solvay's site before being shipped to its destination. This is done in accordance with all the regulatory and legal compliances. The tags must only be removed immediately before the product is used. Once used, the empty containers must be tagged again and all tag numbers recorded. On arrival at your site, all of the paperwork should be checked against the product received to ensure it's correct. This must be carried out before signing the delivery paperwork, receiving the product, and moving it to the dedicated storage area. The key points for the storage area are: it should be a secure area of solid ground, preferably concrete, away from incompatible substances, clearly labelled and well illuminated. There should be an eye wash, shower and running water close by, and the Solvay safety poster should be displayed. For transferring IBCs, always ensure that they are handled by qualified forklift truck drivers. If the IBCs are to be lifted onto a marine vessel, then secure lifting straps must be used, not chains. For transferring Paramove in ISO tanks, there is a separate ISO tank transfer discharge procedure which should be followed. The key points are: throughout Paramove transfer, full personal protective equipment must be worn. PVC acid suit, rubber boots, chemical-resistant gloves, goggles or safety spectacles, safety helmet and face shield. Only dedicated stainless steel or PTFE chemical delivery hoses must be used. For transfer by pressurized air, only clean filtered oil-free air must be used. The air pressure must not exceed 2.5 bar. Throughout the Paramove transfer, ensure that you have a supply of water available at all times. Most problems around Paramove can be solved with water. Water has two effects. Firstly, it reduces the concentration of Paramove, thereby reducing the hazardous properties. Secondly, water has a cooling effect. If paramove begins to decompose rapidly, it's best to move everyone away to a safe distance and, if possible, to spray the container with water. Now let's look at how to deal with more specific situations that may arise around paramove. First, what to do if paramove comes into contact with the eyes or skin. The most important point is to take immediate action by rinsing with plenty of water. With quick action, the risk of serious damage will be reduced. That's why it's vital that there is an adequate source of water available and that the supply is both working and readily accessible. In the case of contact with eyes, immediately remove contact lenses and spectacles and rinse for at least 15 minutes. You should always seek medical assistance. In the case of contact with skin, if symptoms persist, you should also seek medical assistance. What to do if paramove is ingested? If paramove is ingested, you should rinse your mouth with water and seek medical assistance immediately. Do not induce vomiting, as this could cause even greater damage. What to do if paramove is inhaled? When inhaled, paramove vapor will be irritating to the throat and lungs. The natural reaction is to move away into fresh air. If you move into fresh air and the symptoms persist, please seek medical assistance. What to do when paramove is spilled? Spillages of paramove should be dealt with by diluting the product with water, thus making it less hazardous. The diluted material should then be disposed of in accordance with local regulations. If the spilled product comes into contact with combustible materials, such as wood, paper, or cloth, the materials must be thoroughly rinsed with water. This will prevent any possibility of a fire occurring later. What to do when paramove is exposed to fire? At this point, we should remind you that paramove itself does not burn. However, it's also important to remember that if spilled onto combustible materials and the spillage is not dealt with, the combustible materials can catch fire at a later stage. In the event of a fire near the area where paramove is stored, evacuate everyone to a safe distance. Water can be sprayed onto the paramove container to cool it, but only if it can be done from a safe distance. All of these emergency actions are summarized on the Solvay safety poster. Thank you for your attention, and may we now ask you to complete the training validation.